So here's the lab packet that's going to look at the diagrams for your lab activity. We talked about a couple of them in the introduction video, but we're going to go through these diagrams that you will see in your packet. So again, a joint is an articulation between two or more bones. Most joints contain a single articulation. Each articulation contains the name of two bones or sockets. So if your answer on a test contains the name of just one bone, it would be wrong. So joints are named for both the bones that are involved, or both of the bones that are connected. So for instance, in the elbow, you have the humeroradial articulation or the humeroulnar articulation. So that means that it's joining the humerus plus the ulnar bones. So always know that when you're reading or when you're looking at articulations, it gives you a clue by just looking at the name of them. We talked about this earlier. Your joints have a articular cartilage that surrounds the ends of the bones to help protect it. This is the articular capsule, this whole structure that's right here. Then you have synovial membrane that kind of basically encapsulates that capsule. It kind of holds it together. And then inside you have the synovial fluid, which helps provide lubrication for the bones so that it reduces the amount of friction and grinding that occurs. So we'll start with the shoulder joint. The shoulder is one of the largest and most complex joints in the body, and it's formed where the humerus, so the head of the humerus here, fits into the scapula or the shoulder joint. So here is the scapula. But there are a couple other bones that are in play for your shoulder joint. So you have the acromion, which is the bony projection off the scapula. And then you have the clavicle. Okay, so here's your clavicle up here. And then you also have the coracoid process, which is kind of that hook-like bony projection from the scapula. So a couple different bones, although the main ones will be the scapula and the humerus. It also has a couple of other important structures. So the rotator cuff is going to be the collection of muscles and tendons that surround the joint, and it's going to give it support and allow its range of motion. So this would include these different ligaments, the coracoacromial ligament and the tendons here of the bicep, of the brachii. So all of the tendons and the ligaments that are involved in there. You have the bursa, the small sac of fluid that cushions and protects the tendons of the rotator cuff. You also have a cuff of cartilage called the labrum, so the glenoid labrum, which is right here, which forms a cup for the ball-like head of the humerus to fit into. So the labrum is right here, and it allows that ball part to fit into the socket. So again, looking kind of here, this structure right here would be one of the bursas. Here's the labrum, which we just talked about. The synovial membrane would then just be in this particular area, because this whole thing is going to be kind of that capsule then. And then also the glenoid cavity, which is going to be right here. That indentation, basically, or that group, that spacing in between the scapula and the humerus. If you were looking at an actual model, you can see where some of these ligaments exist. So these would be things that would be part of a rotator cuff. So the external coracoid clavicular ligament, the mouthful, would be right here. Right underneath then would be the internal. And then you have the superior transverse ligament of the scapula, which would exist right here. Kind of went down. We looked at the coracoid humeral ligament and then the glenoid humeral ligament. So again, look at the names to figure out which two bones are attached. So the glenoid cavity here, that's attaching to the humerus there. You can tell a lot by looking at a name. Here is the coracoacromial ligament. And here is the supraspinatus tendon. On moving down, and we got the biceps brachii tendon in red, and then up on top here you can have the acromioclavicular ligament, which again is going to connect the clavicle and the acromion process. Moving over to a knee joint. So here's looking at it from a ventral perspective, and here's looking at it from a dorsal view. So front and back. So you can see here that this medial, again, think of the medial side of the body. This is the medial collateral ligament, or the MCL. This is the lateral LCL collateral ligament. So again, it's going to kind of keep the knee in place, those two ligaments. Then again, you go to here's the medial meniscus. So this space or this structure in between, and the lateral meniscus. Meniscus of the different knee joints. So these are going to be kind of crescent shaped wedges in between the bones made of fibrocartilage, and their job is to kind of increase the stability of the joint, and also help kind of distribute the load, the weight of our body. They help absorb shock, and they also provide lubrication to the knee joint. So oftentimes when your meniscus is damaged, it can cause a lot of pain because, again, you don't have this cushion, really is what it functions as, this cushion that reduces the friction, and you're going to start to get more bone grinding on bone. So medial meniscus on the medial side, lateral will be on the lateral side. Two more ligaments in the knee, the ACL. You hear a lot about that in terms of athletes who damage or tear their ACL, and the PCL, the posterior cruciate ligament. So the anterior cruciate ligament prevents the femur from sliding backwards onto the tibia, or the tibia sliding forward, and the posterior cruciate ligament prevents the femur from sliding forward on the tibia. So basically it prevents sliding of the knee either forward or backwards. Typically, if these are damaged, they have to be surgically repaired because your knee would become unstable because it would be popping forward or popping backwards. Here's what these would look like. Again, posterior cruciate versus anterior cruciate on an actual model. So you can see here this anterior cruciate model. If you're looking at, here's the patella. It kind of comes back here to help keep that bone from sliding backwards. And again, here too, here's your posterior cruciate ligament that's in the back here. It prevents this bone from sliding backwards. So it's really kind of keeping, both of these are really important in stabilizing your joint. Here's another diagram showing you, again, the knee, just like the shoulder, is a really complex joint. So you can kind of see the tendon here that would be connecting bone to muscle, the quadriceps femoris tendon. It would be right here. Here's your patella. So we're looking at it from a sagittal section here. We're looking at it from the side. So here's the patella, bursa, a fat pad. You can feel your fat pad sometimes on there. And again, fat pad just kind of helps provide some extra cushioning and support. This is bone, your tibia. This is your femur. The synovial membrane would kind of be right here, outlined in red. So again, this membrane that holds the capsule together. This would be the joint cavity. This light, this blue here would be the articulating cartilage, or the articular cartilage, and then in this joint cavity would be where the synovial fluid exists. And then if you're looking at it from a cross section, okay, this would be the front and this would be the back then. Here's your posterior cruciate ligament, here's your anterior cruciate ligament. Again, the condyles of the tibia, lateral and medial, the medial meniscus, the lateral meniscus, and then here would be your ACL. So this is actually a pretty cool view looking at it, looking at the cross section, looking at it downwards, so that you can see that both, these meniscus play a pretty important role in preventing pain, because otherwise you get bone on bone. And then finally, kind of looking at a vertebral joint. Here is the intervertebral disc that would join here. Another joint would be here where you have the facet joint. This is a fibrous cushion. This nucleus pulposus is really important because it helps your vertebral column withstand all of the force that is applied to your spine and your backbone. So it's an important shock absorbing structure. And it's completely surrounded then by the annulus fibrosus, which basically just helps kind of stabilize this intervertebral disc. So the disc is made up of these two portions, or these two parts. So those are some of the different structures of a shoulder, knee, and a vertebral joint, just to kind of give you a general idea of how they are made up of, or the ligaments that make up those joints, the tendons that make them up, the bones that are involved, and also some of the other supporting structures like the parts of the joint cavity and bursas and meniscuses. So fill out the diagrams on your sheet, and if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. Have a great day.